Hi, welcome back to Teens Talk Politics. I'm Sam, and today I'm joined by my co host Andrew. We're going to welcome Andrew back as we talk about the recent death of a very influential member of today's common society, Colin Powell, who was Secretary of State under Bush from 2001 to 2005 and served a major role in some of the elections leading up to the present day. So, we're going to start it off with just the fact that pa- Colin Powell has died. It's a big deal for the nation. He was battling with cancer for several years and has just succumbed to COVID 19 even after being vaccinated. And that. So it's unfortunate that he had to do this, but it was, as we were talking about before the episode is airing, we were talking about it was not much of a surprise. He is an old guy who was suffering from cancer, and then since he was immunocompromised, this whole shebang went on. But yeah, it's extremely unfortunate that this happened. And as we know, Powell's life was extremely influential through his time in the military as a 4-star general and all the way up to Secretary of State. And that's a big deal. So,
Yeah,
any thoughts,
I
Andrew?
think it's kind of amazing to me that he was born in 1937, which would have been a year that FDR was still president, which was a long time ago, as I think we're all aware. And like you said, I think it's very important to understand that he died of complications with COVID-19 prior to having being vaccinated. However, he was serving from other long-term conditions that was affecting his health. Like you said, he was suffering from blood cancer. So it makes sense that he would have a harder time with COVID-19 when you retract the virus. Even if you've been vaccinated, you're 11 times more likely to be hospitalized if you're not vaccinated versus if you are vaccinated. And him being vaccinated, he had a higher chance of surviving from COVID
Mm-hmm.
19. He was just in that very small percentage of people that died from COVID 19 prior to being vaccinated. And like we said, he had underlying health conditions, which did increase the chances of dying from COVID 19. I think that's pretty clear and that's pretty obvious for those that actually know what COVID 19 is doing to the body. And it's just weakening your immune system. Of course, it's a respiratory disease. So it's just very important to understand that the
Mm-hmm.
vaccine does help. Yes, someone that was fully vaccinated did die from COVID 19. He was also 84, so you have to consider that at the same time. Like I said, he was born in 1937, a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it kind of, I don't want to say doesn't surprise me that he died.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's not as big of a shock that you might think. When you're getting to this age, when you already have underlying health conditions, yes, you've been vaccinated, but being vaccinated can only go so far. I know it's very sad to see that he has passed away after being involved in politics so much, especially the last few years, even after being Secretary of State and having to resign back in 2005 after the push from the public trying to get him to resign after bad decisions on the Iraq War. Him switching from the Republican Party to going back to the registering as an independent after January 6th attack really showed you a push of a moderate Republican saying, okay, the Republican Party is not doing as I would want it to do. It's sacking the United States Capitol. That makes sense to me. And then he chose to switch to being an independent,
Mm-hmm.
showing the Republican Party that no, he does not approve of what they're doing. But it doesn't surprise me either because he did endorse Hillary Clinton,
Yeah.
he did endorse Joe Biden, and he endorsed Obama twice. All of those are Democrats, and he was a registered Republican, so that doesn't really surprise me that much that he switched party
Mm-hmm.
affiliations. But it was just the last straw, the January 6th insurrection, really, to make him switch his party affiliation from Republican to Independent, and that was the first time he had switched party affiliation since 1995 when he switched to the Republican Party in 1995 from Independent after serving in the Army for several years since I don't know what year it was, but or 1958. Here we go. It was 1958 to 1993. He was in the Army, and he was an independent under all of those years until 1995, like I said before, where he switched to the Republican Party, up until 2021, where he switched back to being an independent.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, go on.
Mm-hmm. And it's very important to have one of these people that represents, especially as a Secretary of State, as a moderate person, so that on the world stage they can accurately represent the views of the American people. It's especially after a long Trump era. It's important to show what America's really all about, and it's important for everyone to be accurately represented. As Powell was an independent, and his very moderate views certainly affected the country in a more bipartisan way. Albeit some people would not be as happy with that, it's overall positive to American society for a person of that privilege who is supposed to be working with other world leaders to be on that level of bipartisan cooperation. It is interesting to see his political career play out as what he thinks. And in some ways, he's like many Americans who want to see the best for their country and not with just partisan flaws. He represents the shift in Republican to Democratic ideologies through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, albeit a bit late. It does accurately represent how America has changed through time, and he does a very good job of trying to be the most productive and cooperative person possible. And I really appreciate him doing that, and that is something really to pay respects to
So
as he
I
has
kind of want to put
passed.
this in perspective. So I'm going to list
So yeah.
the roles he's had in people's cabinets. So in 1987, under Ronald Reagan, he was the United States National Security Advisor. He did that up until 1989, where he was promoted to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing. He was the United States Deputy National Security Advisor till 1987. Then he was promoted in 1987 to United States National Security Advisor up until 1989. Under George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton, he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff from 1989 to 1993. Then he switches to the Republican Party up when Bush becomes president. He is registered Republican, and from 2001 up to 2005, when he had resigned because the public had a lot of beef with him over decisions he had in the Iraq War, he resigned in 2005 after Bush had just been reinaugurated. Remember, he is a registered Republican. But then you actually look at
Mm-hmm.
his views of what he thinks about certain policies, and it'll be very interesting to look at that. He is pro-choice regarding abortion, and he says we need reasonable gun control. You don't hear that from normal conservatives anymore.
Yep.
Am I wrong, right? Most conservatives are pro-life, not pro-choice. They're anti-abortion.
No.
They believe in no gun control at all. They think the government is being too involved in how people use their guns, which basically leads to more mass shootings. I don't really know how that adds up, however. We have a Republican here, Colin Powell, that doesn't believe that. Believes that we need reasonable gun control in this country, which is completely normal. I would think that is what your normal brain would go to, but of course, some people don't have a normal brain to go to. But we have to look at these. These are policies that you would normally think, oh, a Democrat would support this. But no, he was a registered Republican up until 2001, only a few months ago
Yep.
before his death. And I think that's quite interesting to look at.
And he, as I was saying earlier, he accurately represents, especially with an older generation of the populist, slightly moderate in today's standards, person, as he is, as we talked about, an older fellow, and typically he's not that far left in today's standards, and he's not that far right. He just wants to see what's best for his country. And up until the day he died, he was voicing what he believed in, and showed the American people, especially these older generations, of what he believes in and what should be the right thing for this country. It's important that we recognize this older generation as we get, especially into the wave of baby boomers in the 50s and 40s, that we realize this is that we're going to continue to have this continuous wave, and a substantial wave that makes up a good portion of the American population, that believes similar to this the way he does. And having a representative for that and throughout history has been very important. And Colin Powell definitely represented a good portion of older Americans.
Yeah, and yeah,
So
I think it's
that's
also
very
very
important to
important to
realize.
understand that he actually represented a big chunk of the American people when you actually look at who he supported and his political views. Like I said, he was pro-abortion and
Hmm.
pro-life or pro-choice. Sorry.
Very true.
However, he had criticisms of Democratic presidents. For example, he thought President Obama was increasing the size of the federal government too much, which I think a big chunk of the American people believe that. They say, okay, so I have more left leaning ideology. However, some people in the White House I don't agree with. Some people think that, yes, Biden was better than Trump. However, he's still not getting the job done. Some people believe that he's not doing the right thing. However, like I said, they have left leaning ideologies, so they register as a Democrat, or maybe they are registered independent but always vote Democrat. So you really have this split in the American people. And Colin
Hmm.
Powell just really shows you he is one of them. Left leaning ideologies. He endorses Democrat presidents after Bush, so Obama, and then endorsed Hillary Clinton, who did not become president, and then Joe Biden, who did become president and is the current president. And you see that, yes, he's endorsing these people, but he also has criticism for them. You do not see
Hmm.
Republicans today that endorse Donald Trump, but then publicly
Hmm.
express criticism of him. You will see them privately do it. You will see them put votes on the Senate floor that kind of just, you can infer that they have this criticism of Trump, whether it's an impeachment vote or something, but they don't actually publicly say anything. And I think Colin Powell crosses that line that not many Republicans are willing to cross. Yes, they will criticize Democrat presidents, but they don't also
Hmm.
endorse them, thinking they're the better candidate.
Yeah, Powell was one of the last very vocal, influential, re- moderate Republicans who served in positions such as that. And it's unfortunate to see this very influential part of our society and of, as you're saying, a good chunk of American voters being gone now. And without this to happen again, like who's gonna stop the media from taking advantage of these older generations and persuading them into their own ideas? Cough cough, Fox News. It's like older people are typically just susceptible to this very weird and modern system of American politics, and without that representative, Colin Powell, there to set them straight, who has been with the American people for a long time, could be a dangerous precedent, and to something for the polls to be mindful of, albeit not
And I
as
also
big of a
do want to
deal, as
mention
more
that,
very and more
as
symbolic.
I hope most of us know, if you serve in the military, you are most likely going to lean towards the right. You're more conservative. And this is why Colin Powell is just such a I guess
In modern America.
specific individual, because, or unique is probably a better word, unique individual, because he served in the military. He served under Republican presidents. He served up under George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, all Republican presidents. Registered Republican, endorses Democrats, votes Democrat in modern era, goes to the Democrat National Convention in 2020, then switches party affiliation in 2021 because the Capitol was sacked almost. But I just want to say it's very interesting that he was in the military, a place where you have a lot of soldiers that are traditionally conservative, and you have a military official coming out, registered Republican, but like I said, all those things, he endorses Democrats and then eventually registered independent. So I think that's very interesting. And of course, as we are really young, we really haven't grown up with him in the 90s or when he was serving as Secretary of State. I was not alive during that time. So all these things that he's done, I have to read up on. I never lived through a lot of these things. Of course, being in the present day, I'm going to think better of him because of way certain
Mm-hmm.
articles that we're reading about him are laid out, or other biases that you see. I don't know plural of bias, but you know what I mean, in these articles versus what you're going to see on the live television when this actually happened in 2005 when he had to resign, and then other bad decisions he made during his career that were widely reported on the news. So we're pointing him in this good light. And I believe that,
Mm-hmm.
yes, he's done these wonderful things. He's a bipartisan member of society or former member of society. I think it is a great loss to the nation. We've had President Obama, President
Mm-hmm.
Biden, we've had President Clinton. Bush doesn't have Twitter, so we don't see a thing from him about it. He's probably putting a message out, though. So you have a bunch of former presidents. I'm assuming most House members, most members of the Senate have all put in
Mm-hmm.
things out saying, okay, I'm sad that he died. He did all these great things. He got the medal of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And I think he was a good person overall. No one's perfect. I think we know that. But when you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at his track record, it is very good, very bipartisan. And he keeps an open mind, which I
Yep.
don't think is something that we do in today's society. You're either in one party or the other. He was part of the Republican, the Democrat, and the Independents. He was part of all of them because he kept an open mind. I might be a Democrat on one issue, I might be a Republican on another issue. I might be a Republican that supports a Democrat, I might be a Democrat that supports a Republican. He kept an open mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish people did that more often now. If you grow up in a Republican household, you're probably going to grow up as a
Yep.
Republican and vote Republican for the rest of your life. Not keeping an open mind and thinking, okay, so my parents thought this must be the right thing to do. Oh, I don't think abortion is good because I grew up with that. Well, that must be the right thing. But you just don't keep an
Mm-hmm.
open mind.
Yep. Times are changing, and we need those to adapt to lead the way. And if there's nothing else
I
to
think
say, I
we're
think
good.
we're gonna wrap it up for the this episode. Anything else to say, Andrew? All right. Well, make sure you guys tune in on Friday for weekly news. This has been Teen Star Politics, and bye.